Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl OG Chizzy Beats. So if you guys took that poll that I put up like a couple weeks ago, you would think that this is supposed to be a Wheezy, Gunna, Young Thug type tutorial. But what had happened was when I started actually making the beat, it just had a completely different vibe, and I decided to follow that. And what I ended up getting was a Jacquees, king of R&B, also Summer Walker type vibe, early 2000s. Like, that sounds like a lot, but it all makes sense when you actually hear the beat. So if you're interested in seeing how I made that beat, want to know the chord progressions, all that good stuff, go ahead, keep watching, hit the like button, leave a comment, and let's go ahead and get into the cook-up.
All right, y'all. So I just want to reiterate that when I started this beat, I really had every intention of doing what y'all asked and making a Gunna Wheezy type beat. But then I started to pick out my sounds and I started to make chords, and I'm like, this is kind of Jacquees Summer Walker, and who am I to deny a beat from going in the direction that it wants to? So I just took that and ran with it and came up with a Jacquees style type of beat, specifically on his like King of R&B album, which has a lot of guitars and stuff like that. So if you haven't listened to that, definitely take a listen. So like I said, the first thing I did was I went into flex and I chose a guitar because Gunna often has that guitar, pluck sound, and I chose this guitar called the Dark Star Acoustic that sounds like this. So a nice, really good sounding guitar. And what I did was that I was like, let me lay down some chords, because some chords will probably make it easier for me to make a melody. And this is the chord progression that I came up with. This is actually a 1-5-4-1 chord progression, and I'll kind of explain what that means. So the key that I chose was B minor, and this is a B minor 7th chord, which is the root note, which is a 1. Then I went down to F sharp minor 7th chord, which is the 5th note of the scale. Then I went down to the E minor 7th chord, which is the 4th note of the scale. And then I went back up to the root note, which is just this same chord with an extra note up here. So let me play it for y'all. This is what it sounds like. So yeah, super vibey. I was like, nah, I'm gonna take this and run with it. So before we move on to the next elements of the beat that really like set off that Jacquees style, I'm gonna go over the effects that I put on the guitar. So for the guitar, I added fruity reverb. I just turned up the size. I put on ambience, which is a free like reverb plugin. I kept it at its default. Then I put on fruity flangus on its default, and I turned this down a lot. Then I put on a parametric EQ to cut out some of the low end and the high end. And I turned that down a lot as well. And then I added one more EQ just to cut out a lot of the low ends. So without any effects, this is what the guitar sounds like. And with effects, this is what it sounds like. So I feel like the effects just add like some more sauce to it, and I liked it a lot. So once I had that chord progression, my next idea, and I hadn't fully given up on like the Gunna idea yet. I was like, let me try again. So what I did is I took those chords and I started to strum them and arpeggiate them so that it looks like this. But then this is when I officially realized like this is no longer a Gunna beat. This is an R&B type beat. So again, I just used the same chords. I did add an extra note to give it like 5 notes per chord progression, because that's just what I wanted it to sound like. And this is what it sounds like all together. So yeah, I was really feeling how that sounded, and like I said, at this point I just decided to dive in head first. I'm like, this is an R&B type beat. So what I did next was that I took those chords that I showed you guys first and I started to build layers around it. So the first layer that I added was this pad from the 76 Collective's one-shot kit called like Ethereal, and I used this pad and I used those same chords, and this is what it sounds like. So yeah, I really like how that sounded a lot. What I did first was change the envelope a little bit so that it's more of a gradual attack. Then I added parametric EQ just to cut out a lot of the low ends, and then a reverb, and I kept it pretty light. So that was the first layer that I added, and the next one I added was again another pad, again from the 76 collective. And this kind of looks a little bit crazy, but it's basically the same chords that I showed you guys before. I just layered them up because I wanted to have a bit more depth. So this is what it sounds like. So yeah, I really like that a lot. The next thing I did to this was just I took a parametric EQ to it to cut out some of the low end and the high end. And then I put on a fruity reverb to give it some spacing. And then the last layer I added was this guitar sound from Produced by Loners Layers kit. It's called Hendrix. It's kind of a guitar sound. And I really like it a lot. And this was the final layer that I added. And it sounds like this. So all together with the guitar pluck and the chords, this is what the beat was sounding like so far. So I really like that a lot, and what I knew I needed to do next was add a perc loop. So what I decided to do was add this perc loop called Clockwork that I got from Splice, and it literally kind of sounds like a clock ticking. So this is what it sounds like. So after adding that perc loop, I was like, you know what this beat needs? A vocal chop, because I love adding vocal chops to everything. So again, I went back into Splice and I chose this vocal chop and reversed it. And I'm gonna unreverse it just so you guys can hear what it sounds like. And I'm gonna also take off the effects so you kind of hear like what it sounds like raw. So yeah, it's a pretty decent vocal chop, but I love to reverse things, so I had to reverse it. And for the effects, what I did was I put on a lot of effects on it. I put on a parametric EQ on the old telephone preset just to cut out some of the low end and the high end, and it gives it kind of this like crunchy, like old telephone type of feel to it. Then I put on Fruity Flangus, then I put on Cymatic's Origin, and I turned down the reel, I turned down the movement a little bit, and I turned this down to about 8,000 hertz just to kind of downsample the vocals and kind of like muddy it up a little bit. Then I added a fruity phaser because I like how the phaser sounds. Then I added a very small amount of fruity fast distortion on the default preset because I kind of wanted to add some crunchiness and kind of like grit to the vocals. And then I added a fruity delay and I turned that down a bit. So all together with the effects that I added, this is what that first vocal chop sounds like. So yeah, I really like that a lot, but I was like, I kind of want a different vocal chop to kind of pair with this. So what I did next was that I went back into Splice and I actually found a perc loop that had a vocal in the very beginning that I liked. So this is what it sounds like without any effects. So for the effects on this vocal chop, I added a fruity delay just to give it some spacing. Then I added Destructor, which basically gives it some distortion and a couple other cool effects. And then I added a fruity reverb 2 just to give it some spacing. And then I did again the parametric EQ2 on the old telephone preset. So all together, this is what this vocal chop sounds like. So yeah, really cool. And then the last like kind of like vocal chop that I added is actually an accent that comes, it's actually like a flute that comes from Produced by Loners Layers kit. And this is what it sounds like. So yeah, I like that a lot. So what I wanted to do is kind of add something like another melody to it. And what I first started off doing was I came up with this melody and I used this pluck. And this is the melody that I initially came up with. So it was cool, but like it was kind of busy for me and I really tried to make R&B beats as spaced out as possible. So what I decided to do was actually first to get that sound for the pluck, it sounded like this originally. So very dry. So what I did was add ambience. I added a parametric EQ just to cut out some of the low ends. And then I added Fruity Flangus because I like Fruity Flangus. And that's how I got that sound. And what I decided to do was actually reverse it. So I reversed it and this is what it sounded like. So I liked how that sounded, kind of like a riser. And what I did was I just chopped it up and used it at different points of the beat. And with the other elements of the beat, this is what it sounded like. All right, so the last couple of elements that I added to this beat was this ARP sound that comes from Kill September's Opiate Bank. And I just took the chords that I had and I just took out basically this chord right here just to give it some more spacing. And this is what it sounds like. So basically just something to add something on the top and some ear candy just to kind of add some different element to the beat. And then the very last melodic element that I added to this was using that pluck again. So this is what the first pluck sounds like. And this is how the second pluck sounds like. So all together with the other elements of the beat, this is what it sounds like. So at that point, I was super happy that I decided to trust the beat and go in the R&B direction. And what I decided to do was render it out and pitch it down 200 cents just because I felt like it fit better there. And this is what it sounds like pitched down. Yeah, so I like that a lot. I can just hear Jacquees' ease on this beat just going dummy. Oh, the land of the free. And for my drums, I kept it pretty simple. It looks like there's a lot, but it's just like pretty simple what I actually did for the drums. And I'll play it for you guys first, and then I'm going to break down what I actually did. Okay, so for the drums, I started off with a kick and I kept it pretty simple. Then what I did next was I used a snap. So this is a snap that I used. I just put it on the 3 of every other bar. All right, and then the next thing I did was layer up that snap with this rim shot. So as you guys saw, I didn't use that snap and rim on every third beat of a measure. And what I did to fill up that space instead was I used this snare hit that sounds like this, just to fill up that space and kind of switch up the beat a little bit. Then the next thing I did was add these hi-hats. Then I just started going in and adding some perks. So I used this snare that plays at the end of the 4 bars. Then I added this open hat. Then I added this perk. Then I added some rolls using a different perk sound. And then I added one more perk. So yeah, like I said, like there's kind of a lot of elements to the drum, but the actual patterns that I use are pretty basic and pretty simple. So at this point, the beat was basically done. All I needed to do was add a bass line. So I decided to use this 808 that I have from a kit, and this is the pattern that I came up with. So yeah, that is it. That is how I had real intentions of making a Gunna beat and ended up with a Jacquees style beat that I can definitely also hear Summer Walker on. They actually have a song together. So if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment. Let me know down in the comments what you guys want to see from me next. It's probably going to be an actual Gunna, Wheezy, Young Thug type video because that's what this was supposed to be. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and I will see you guys in the next video.